be knocking on thousands of doors between now and August, but there's also going to be a lot of material that's sent in the mail to get my message out. And unfortunately, like everything else in life, the cost of these things increases all of the time. Now, most of us know that the last 10 years in the state, and of course the country as well, have been very difficult. And it's time that our governments recognize that and honor the values that made this country great. And those things are, and there are three major things that I would like to bring out this evening. One is personal responsibility, personal freedom and responsibility, living within our means, and that would be individually and with our government. And also, the third thing is we should be able to help out our neighbors without expecting that the government is going to be there to help them. And these are the things that have made the country great and Michigan great. And you know, I grew up, and it wasn't that long ago, when this was one of the most successful and prosperous states in the Union. And our country, for hundreds of years, of course, has been admired. So we need to honor these values that made the state and the country great, and we will be just fine. It's this period now that we have a lot of struggles, and you see this in Lansing and in Washington. So these values I like are the values that I brought to the City Council. And you know, I served 11.5 years representing you, and it was my honor to do so. And you know, I fought many battles, and folks don't realize how much time it takes to have one little victory. As an example, David Eisenbacher here was with me when we basically forced a switch of the city's auditor. The city had the same auditor for over 20 years, and we thought it was good to get another set of eyes to look at the books. And that took probably about 60 hours of my time to get that through, because it was literally a battle. Other things, we pushed through the Taxpayers Protection Amendment, which is now part of our city's charter. If the City Council wants to raise the general fund tax rate, they have to put that forward and have an affirmative vote of the people in order for that to succeed. In my time on the City Council, we had 3 tax rate reductions in 2002, 2006, and 2007. In my first term, we put forward a slate. Basically, we put forward a representative from the City Council to instigate reform on the trash authority. Now that might not seem like much, but as a result of those efforts, it returned immediately $700,000 to the City of Troy, and it had a significant cost reduction in garbage and refuse collection, which to this day is paying dividends. We also created over 100 acres of parkland, and that's important because Troy, any community needs to be a livable place where we can also enjoy the parkland, which has many benefits for young and old as well. Cancellation of the I-75 and Long Lake Road interchange, which was very unpopular in the city, but had been promoted for many years by the city administration and the majority of council until that changed, and I believe that was the election of 2005. One of the big things that I was an advocate of during my time on the City Council was open government. I believe strongly in shedding an open light and making government as transparent as possible. And when I was first elected and came into office in 2000, it was to my dismay that the City Council at the time was repeatedly violating the Open Meetings Act. And they were just reenacting, if you will, things that they had done in closed session, which is not the way we're supposed to govern. We need to actually show the citizenry as elected officials how we are making decisions. And we need to actually put ourselves up for scrutiny, and that involves criticism as well. And believe me, in my years in office, by taking stands on issues, I've endured my share of criticism, and it's not easy. But I really believe that if people are going to put themselves up to be elected for an office, they need to stand for something, because otherwise robots could be doing it instead. And I've got many other things I can be doing. So if I'm going to be getting elected to office, and I believe this in my entire existence on the city council, I'm going to take this position and I'm going to argue vociferously for it. Now that doesn't mean I'm making an ignorant decision. I take my time and investigate the issues at hand. But believe me, if you want me to tell you how I feel, I will do that. And that's what elected officials are supposed to do. Finally, I want to just speak briefly about what's ahead. The 41st District covers Clawson and Troy. This is the seat that's currently represented by Martin Olenberg. He has served for 6 years, and now he's reached his term limit per the state constitution. And so the seat is effectively open. And the population of our district is about 100,000. There will be a primary on August 7th. I, of course, am running as a Republican. Right now, there are 3 declared candidates. There may be more, there may be less when all is said and done. The filing deadline is May 15th. The withdrawal deadline is May the 18th. One more thing I want to mention. I did say the last thing was finally, but I made a mistake. This is April, and April is known, and I'm going to just mention this because it speaks to the importance of what our country means, and the fact that, you know, most of us are born into a free society, and it's something that we all take for granted. And it requires some self-evaluation from time to time to realize that it requires a diligent citizenry to protect what we have. So this is April, and it's also known as Black April. And Black April was April. It was April of 1975, and I believe very strongly about this. So I apologize if I kind of speak emotionally about it, but 1975 was a time of great turmoil in this country. It was shortly after President Nixon resigned and President Ford took over. The elections of 1974 produced a strong Democrat majority in Congress, and that Democrat majority in Congress refused to provide support for the Republic of Vietnam. And because of the withdrawal of troops and withdrawal of foreign aid to the Republic of Vietnam in 1973, it created 2 things. 1, an economic depression, and 2, shortages in the Free Republic troops. And so April of 1975 is when there was a full-scale collapse of the military structure, and of course the overrunning of Saigon by communist troops. And so April 30th is when the Republic fell to the communists. And my wife, she's not able to be here because she is with her, attending to her parents in Australia. Her father was part of the government of South Vietnam at the time, and was put into an internment camp. They called it a re-education camp. But about 200,000 of the government workers, if you will, the government apparatus of the Republic of Vietnam, which is Free Vietnam, perished in these camps. And the folks that were lucky enough became boat people, and for the next, I'd say, it was basically between 1975 all the way up into the 90s, when folks were trying to escape the communist regime in Vietnam to freedom. And so one of my dreams is for next April to bring my father-in-law onto the floor of the state legislature. And my father-in-law, of course, was the chief circuit judge in Vinh Long province in South Vietnam, and served in the internment camp. They tell him that he has the lungs of a smoker. He's 70 years old. He's never smoked in his life. And folks that have lived through these sorts of things don't talk about it, but we can only imagine how difficult it was. I've had the pleasure to meet many people who have served 10 and 15 years in these camps, and their only crime was that they believed in freedom. And I have great respect for these people, because all I had to do to get my freedom was to be born. And most of us were the same way. We were born into it. And we do not realize how blessed we are. You know, my mother-in-law, she never left Australia when she arrived from the refugee camp in 1978. She never ever left Australia until 2010, when she came here for my U.S. reception after marrying my wife. And For all of these years, America was the great bastion of freedom. Now, Australia, of course, is a good place to live, but it wasn't America. And so she was so excited to come here. And that's what also kept my father-in-law going when he was incarcerated by the communists. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I wanted to bring the awareness to you that April 30th, 1975 was a very black day for this country, because we had promised in the Paris Peace Accords, when we withdrew our troops, that we would not abandon the Free Vietnamese government in Saigon. And we did. We broke our promise, and the Democrats in Congress in 1975 refused to provide the support to back up freedom. And they did, they made this decision, their swords and the plowshares garbage, which sometimes you have to fight for your freedom. No, you cannot be free when you're on your knees, subservient to a dictatorship. So remember that we must not be anything other than diligent citizenry, because what we have today may not be here if we're not diligent. And we need to be able to pass this along from generation to generation. So it's respectful we've had, and it's honored what we've been given. Thank you all very much for coming this evening.